Good morning, good people. Today is Tuesday, November the 4th, 2025. And I just wanted to come on here and speak to you guys for a little bit. So I don't know if this was earlier this week or over the weekend, but apparently the president of this country sent out a tweet, I guess you call it, or whatever, posted on social media in reference to what's going on in Nigeria, and stated that the president or leader of Nigeria needs to step in and stop the killing of the Christians over in Nigeria. And if he doesn't do so, then the president of this country will cut off any aid that the United States is sending to Nigeria, and as well may even send in the military. In which everything in life is a double-edged sword, no matter what it is, for the most part. In which in this case, it is, and so I say that because to fight fire with fire, sometimes it works. Sometimes you basically create a bigger problem when doing so. And so I say this as well because these are terrorist groups that are committing these acts over in Nigeria. And whether they're Middle Eastern or African, that I don't know. But I know they have ties to, if I'm not mistaken, Al-Qaeda, in which we know that Al-Qaeda did start in the Middle East, as far as we know, and it's still an ongoing issue in the Middle East. And so this is not some small-time organization that's committing these acts over in Nigeria. And so if it gets to the point where the United States military is sent into Nigeria, the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to create a bigger problem. I 100% agree with the fact that the killing of Christians or killing of people because of their religious beliefs is completely wrong. And which is sad that the Nigerian Christian community is going through what they're having to go through over there. But in the same breath, Jesus stated that for you to die in his name, you will most likely receive heaven because you died in his name. And I'm saying that to comfort some people, even though some people may look at me and say, well, I'm crazy for saying that, but this is not my words. These are not my words. Jesus said these things. But back to this situation in Nigeria. So it's the same concept with how the United States was in different parts of the Middle East and had been fighting an ongoing war with the terrorist groups over there. And it got to the point where the United States military has actually been pulled out of certain places in the Middle East because it's a fight that no one is winning. The more terrorists that the United States may harm or hurt, they go and recruit 100 more. And so it's just like an ongoing cycle. And then you have military personnel lives that are being lost because they're fighting a battle that no one is winning. So I say all of that, just reason being is that if the United States goes into Nigeria, this is going to be a situation that is going to be a continuous battle. It's going to be continuous conflict. And not only that, the president of this country should be focusing and worrying about the issues that are going on in his own country that he should be leading right now, and not worrying about Nigeria, even though it's terrible. But he can't be worried about what's going on in other countries when we have our own set of problems in the United States. You know, there's a saying that you cannot go and this is me putting my own spin on it, but you can't go fix a water leak in your neighbor's house when your own house is flooding. And that's what this president has been doing and continues to try and do. But it also goes back to the fact that he calls himself the president of peace. So he's going around trying to make peace in other countries, but once again, the country that he's in charge of is in an uproar. I mean, anyone with any type of sense, you don't have to be the smartest person, and you could be the least smartest person and realize that the things that he's doing do not make sense. And yeah, the United States may have some of the best military men and women, but they are not bulletproof. And if they go over to Nigeria, there's a high probability that there will be lives lost on both sides. Not just the terrorists being taken out, but the United States military more than likely will lose lives. And you also have to look at the fact that when things like these are done, that innocent lives are lost and taken as well. And so if he sends the military over there and these terrorists start killing off more and more innocent people because of their ignorance, and or the United States military personnel themselves end up killing innocent people, how are you making the situation any better? Because we've heard it time and time again in other places. Oh, the United States military has completely eradicated the terrorist groups in such and such place. And so many years later, if not sooner, those same terrorist groups re-emerge. I mean, let's look at the Hamas situation. Let's look at Israel and Palestine. This is not necessarily the Palestinians that caused this war. The Israeli military is fighting against a terrorist group, which is the Hamas terrorist group. And for this terrorist group to be able to sustain as long as they have, fighting against a country like Israel that has some of the most highly some of the best military weapons, but yet the Hamas has still been able to continue the fight. So let's look at these things, y'all. Let's use some common sense, because Just because this is a terrorist group and this is the United States, that does not mean that these terrorist groups do not have connections, and not only that, have the capabilities to be able to withstand the United States Army, and also put up a good fight against the United States Army. Because the Hamas group has been doing it for over 2 or 3 years now. And we all know that all of these terrorist groups work with one another. And so they do these things. They start to spread their footprint in order to pull nations or to sway people's thinking, like the president of this United States, and stretch the armies thin. Because, okay, we're going to send the military over into Nigeria. If something more happens with Hamas and Israel, we may have to help them, as far as Israel, defend their borders. So if the United States military ends up being stretched thin, then that makes the United States itself vulnerable to attacks. Especially if we look at the fact that the border control, I can't think of the name of them, but the ones that are the military personnel that are being sent into the different states here to help fight crime. So when you stretch the military like that, they can only be in so many places at one time. And once again, that leaves other areas which may be of importance vulnerable to an attack. So I just pray that Donald Trump rethinks his actions, because when it comes down to aid and stuff like that, we saw in the beginning with that Doge group that they had formed, that they cut aid to several African countries, in which I wouldn't be surprised that Nigeria was one of those countries. And at the same time, the Nigerian president may care less about any type of aid anyways from the United States, because a lot of people are corrupt. A lot of governments are corrupt, in which the Nigerian government may actually be getting some type of kickback, in a sense, from these terrorist groups. These terrorist groups may actually be supporting the Nigerian government, to the point where there is nothing that he can do and or that he's willing to do without risking his own life and his family's life and the people around him lives. But that's what starts to happen when we start to butt in on other people's issues and problems. We start to create more problems for ourselves, and not only that, we find ourselves going down a rabbit hole that we did not realize ran as deep as it does. And there's a lot behind that terrorist group and the government in Nigeria. And this is, like I said, I'm not with the Democrats nor the Republicans. If it makes sense, it makes sense. I don't care what political party says it. In which he's saying some things that make sense, as far as it is terrible what is happening in Nigeria. But what does not make sense is for him to send the United States military into Nigeria. Especially at this point in time, to where we see that the United States itself seems to be falling apart. And it's as if he doesn't care. It's as if he wants it to fall apart. If it takes a lot of money and resources to send the military into any situation. And I say that because they have had the government shut down for over a month now because of some $1 billion healthcare plan that the Republicans don't want to fund, but yet we know that this is necessary and it's needed for a lot of American people. Everyone needs an option when it comes down to healthcare. When I worked in the car business, at one point in time I was paying over $1,200 a month to have healthcare, y'all, and that's ridiculous. $1,200 a month. You know how many bills a lot of people could pay, and I was only paying that in order to have health care. That didn't include any type of deductibles or anything else that I may have to pay, or something that they didn't cover completely and I had to pay the rest of it. So we need options, y'all. And this is why the United States government has been shut down for over a month. But yet, the president of this country is worried about going into other countries in order to fight the problem that they have, and is not willing to bend and stop being so prideful and realize that the people of his own country are in need. The people in the United States are in need, and you're worried about the needs of another country. It doesn't make sense. It truly doesn't. But y'all, I just hope that y'all have a great day and a great rest of your week. If I don't post any other videos, and I pray that more and more y'all come to your senses, and most definitely this president of this country comes to his senses and stop depriving the people that you are supposed to be the leader of, and stop putting other countries' needs over the needs of your own country. And I like to use analogies, but that's just like taking the food that was for you and your children and giving it to another family in order for them to eat, and you have nothing to eat. Share it. Give them some of the food, but you don't give them all of your food and then you go hungry. But that's what's going on. He's putting all of his time and energy into every other issue around the globe, and is not focusing whatsoever on the needs of the United States. But y'all take it easy out there, and I hope to talk to you soon.